Hello, this is Matt Singer. I'm the arts and culture editor with Willamette Week, and today I'm speaking with Steve Herring. He is the CEO of Living Room Theaters, and we spoke to Steve back in August. He was part of a coalition of Oregon theater owners who were petitioning Governor Brown to allow movie theaters to reopen as part of phase one when the state was sort of gradually reopening at the time. And now that we've moved to a different classification system of health risk levels during the pandemic, movie theaters, as of a couple of weeks ago, are allowed to reopen under certain restrictions. And Steve, so this announcement was made a few weeks back. I believe the announcement was made that movie theaters can reopen, and then the snowstorm hit, so maybe rendered it a little bit moot for a week.
It was literally the first day that we were opening. Friday was the night of that snowstorm hitting, and we had all these customers, of the few seats that we could sell,
Right.
emailing and calling us and going, "Hey, can we swap tickets?" And so we said, "Yeah, of course." But yes, of course, the snowstorm that was the signal of our return to actual ticketed movies again.
Right. If it's not one thing, it's another.
Yeah.
But when this announcement was made, a lot of the smaller movie theaters in town, like the Laurelhurst, Hollywood, Cinema 21, kind of all said they were going to take more of a wait and see approach. They were not going to immediately reopen. But I think literally within like a couple of hours of the Browns announcement being made, we received the press release of all the screening information for Living Room. So why did you feel confident in reopening immediately while some of these other venues did not?
Well, we had, back when we way back in the end of summer of last year, we made the decision to open under this really bizarre restaurant hybrid model, where we were allowed to operate the food side of our business and, show movies. So we did a lot of private screenings back at the end of summer. And from all of that, we kind of worked out a lot of the safety COVID, precautions that we wanted to put in place. So we felt like we had all of those things in place, and we had just literally gotten to this place where we had furloughed our last employee that we had, which is our GM, Philip. And it was like 3 days later that Brown announced, "Hey, guess what? You're going to be able to reopen under these very limited circumstances." And Ernesto Ramos, who's our owner, he is also involved in a lot of the programming, and he immediately was like, "Oh, we've got to open. Just, pull out all the stops. We've got to open." And he was right, in terms of knowing that, the peak of the pandemic of that wave had kind of crested, and we were on the downhill momentum of that, getting operational experience again and getting customers used to being able to come in and see that, hey, yeah, you're in a movie theater with like 4 other people. It's pretty safe in a space of that size. And we were, of course, enforcing the mask requirements, which were part of the requirement for movie theaters to open. And in that first round of opening, which was again right around that ice storm, the Oregon Health Authority was not allowing movie theaters to sell concessions of any kind. And so that was really a bummer, both not even from a revenue perspective, but it's, like my dad is always like, there's no movies without popcorn. So those kinds of things of like people really have this associative thing with certain concession items. And so it's only half of the movie experience. And especially from our perspective, where we're a food and beverage destination with movies, this is especially difficult. But again, getting to that, just getting some routine. And, I had made the comment to another news organization at the time that we really felt pretty strongly that somebody needed to do something in downtown because there's got to be something open. And, there's a smattering of restaurants that are opening in different capacities, but we really want to see foot traffic and life return. So all of those things went into our decision. And, in the few weeks since then, concessions have now been allowed as of this last week. And, we've moved down in the risk category from extreme risk to high risk. And then, the other counties around us are now down in moderate risk. So Multnomah County is probably only a few weeks or a month behind that, which will allow higher capacities. But we're still, the social distancing piece of everything is still going to be the guiding factor for what our capacities will allow. So making sure that people can safely sit, 6 to 8 feet apart is where we are in terms of what our max capacity would be.
What have the ticket sales been like over the last couple of weeks?
Really encouraging. When we were doing the private rentals, it took a really long time to get a momentum because it was a new thing for consumers and for guests to come in. And they're like, "What do you mean rent a theater? That seems very expensive." And it was super affordable. We were doing it for $200 and less back then, for up to 10 people at the time. But getting back to a normal ticketed version where you could just go online and buy a ticket like everyone's used to, the floodgates sort of opened. We've basically been selling out almost every one of our evening shows multiple days in advance. Now, granted, it's only 6 to 10 tickets, but it's still really encouraging. I mean, we're seeing box office grosses for us that for the entire weekend that at least is a couple $1,000s a weekend, and that is, literally since last March, we haven't seen that level of business in any way. So it's very, very encouraging, and especially the titles that we're playing, this time of year. If you've been doing this in the movie side of things, usually you've got that kind of the roll off of all the Oscar contenders, and then there's kind of this lull of crappy movies that tend to come out. And this year, because of the way the pandemic pushed everything, there's actually a lot of great movies that are out right now. So it's, as a moviegoer, it's an exciting time to be able to finally get back into movie theater.
Now, how did your employees feel about kind of coming back to work? Were they comfortable with
Yeah,
this?
I mean, it's a hard thing to even say because under this limited guise, we literally just have our GM Philip, and we just brought back our assistant manager from last year, Mike. He hadn't worked with us since the fall, and so we just have the two of them, and both of them, they feel very comfortable with, they're wearing a mask, they, are keeping their distance. We do temperature checks at the door. Everybody so far, from the customers coming in and the people that have been through to see movies, they've been fantastic, in complying with the rules and respecting distance and being great in that way. So all things so far have been good.
Is there a particular movie right now that you've seen that you think works particularly well in a theater as opposed to at home?
There's several. I just saw Land at our theater a couple weeks back, and there's a lot of like really beautiful outdoor photography from the mountains of Wyoming. I guess is where that was filmed. Now that movie is a really hard film, and the trailer doesn't really convey how sad it really is in terms of its core story, but that's the kind of movie where if you were to watch it at home, I don't know that it would have the same impact on you. And it's interestingly shot in a different aspect ratio, so it's pillar boxed in theaters, so it's more of a traditional 4:3 aspect than what you would traditionally see. But there's so many movies that are coming out that like Raya, for example, that everyone's saying it's so beautifully animated. I have not seen it yet, but I expect that to be something where a big screen experience is just much more powerful than seeing it on your TV.